who's paying for the damage?
Well, and there's habitat loss, which is
habitat loss.
Well, basically, that's an interesting thing because in most cases, it's either the private owner or the municipality, that has to mitigate.
Stuck with the damage, who has to clean all that up.
Sometimes Con Ed will, on a case-by-case basis, provide some mitigation. They may replant or they may try to fix some drainage issues, but in general, they basically
towns are stuck with it.
they wash their hands and say that
and walk away.
Yeah.
Do you want to? We have a slide right now with the top 5 fixes.
All right, now this is from the organization I'm part of, which is the LORAX working group. We've come up with a list of what we think moving forward would be a good way to get ourselves out of this box, shall we speak. So the first one is that we really do have to have restitution or mitigation for the currently affected homeowners and municipalities from the line clearing that's occurred. In the future line clearing, the mitigation or restitution has to be built into the process. The second thing that's important is we need to reopen the PSC's, it's actually a 2004 seeker filing, the short form they used. We have to reopen that process to public review, to scientific input, pulling all the stuff together, what we know about climate change now, what we know about ecology, and ecosystem services, pull that all in, property values, and so forth. And that needs to be a public process, not something done in the back room of an Albany office. Third, we need to really get the vegetation management guidelines updated and modernized to reflect the current thinking. Again, these were done in 2005, and the thinking has evolved. The current draft federal guidelines, which may be approved sometime this year, have moved significantly forward in outlining that whole idea of a tiered management from the center line of the transmission line. It's much more ecologically friendly. Our fourth is that we need to make sure that the utilities are notifying homeowners and municipalities ahead of time, and not only notifying them, but giving them written notice of exactly what work needs to be done. In a lot of cases, people were getting notified the day of when the chainsaws were going to show up, or the day before.
Or on a weekend.
And being told, we'll get to that in just a second.
Right.
So being told basically that they were just going to do some light pruning, and yet when they walked out in the backyard, trees were being felled left and right. So the notification process didn't give enough time to react, but in many cases was just not clear. It nowhere covered the scope of the work that was going to be done. So that's the fourth major issue, and in fact we can talk about that a little bit more because there is a piece of legislation at the state level moving through the Senate and the Assembly that is trying to address the notification issue right now.
Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins is really doing a great job at championing that.
And Richard Brodsky, Assemblyman from down in my area in Greenburgh area.
And that particular one is what?
To notify the public 60 days in advance.
To have a 60-day notification and then a 30-day public meeting.
Correct.
But
before any work is done.
The issue with that is basically, even with those 2 steps of notification, there's no arbitration process if the community or the landowner doesn't agree to what is being proposed.
There's still no remedy.
There's no place to go from there. So you can hear about it, but you can't do anything about it.
And the fifth one?
The fifth one, thank you, is very important, is improved supervision and quality assurance of the contractors. Con Ed isn't out there in the field. They hire contracting tree companies like Lewis Tree to go and do the clearing. But oftentimes they are not being monitored, certainly not on a daily basis, perhaps on a project by project, which means a segment. We'll come in every week, or every 2 weeks, we might check in with you to see what's going on.
On the trees tagged?
In general, they have not been. I know that now in Yorktown, now that there's another cycle of clearing starting in Yorktown, and now that there's been so much public outcry and the legislation from the Board of Legislators, Con Ed appears to be going a little bit slower in the sense that they are marking trees selectively. However, I just heard this afternoon, right before this show, that the issue is that is not being communicated with their tree contractors. The tree contractors are still under the thought that they're doing a clear cut, but Con Ed actually came in and said, no, there's only 3 trees you have to remove. So there's there's still miscommunication even between, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Still.
Right. And the vegetative management program or plan, what exactly is that?
Well, it was designed to be a maintenance program for the areas that have been clear cut, and Con Ed is supposed to maintain that area and have replace it with appropriate vegetation. But what they do frequently, what we have learned, is that they spray it with what they call herbicides, but there are chemicals that often keep things from growing back at all.
Growth inhibitors.
Growth inhibitors.
Now, and there's an issue about whether or not there are a lot of watercourses and wetlands that are under the DEC regulatory size, under 12 acres, and therefore are not really covered by anything but local or municipal regulation. However, those Con Ed feels they have a free ride on, and they can do anything they want in relation to those. But one thing I wanted to say about the vegetation management policy is that it's a multi-phased program that's supposed to cycle every 3 years. Right. There's supposed to be the program is supposed to allow them to only have to revisit the same segment of transmission line every 3 years. So they have to be assured that stuff doesn't grow so quickly it's going to get caught up in the lines or arc against the lines in a 3-year interval. So that's why there's some height restrictions or fast-growing species they're going to pull out of there right away. So the PSC mandates the 3-year cycle for reliability. Mm-hmm. Con Ed has determined, and other utilities have determined, that in order to stretch this out so they can maybe do it on a 5-year cycle, they'll use the excessive use of herbicides.
Right, to keep things from growing.
Yeah.
So it's supposedly, looked at from Con Ed, it's a cost savings.
We have about 2 minutes left.
Yes.
Now, the average citizen, or concerned citizen watching the show says, well, what can I do about this?
I think it's important that they contact their local legislators and contact especially the legislators in the state level, yeah. The Senate and Assembly. And also, one can contact the PSC and submit a public petition. There's a at the PSC's website, you can actually contribute a complaint or a petition request. You can contact the governor's office for the Department of the Environment or Department of Energy. Yeah. And I think more than anything, it's just everyone has to be aware of this and sort of spread the word around that this is actually happening. The more public input that's getting to these government agencies, I think the more impact there will have. But the other component, I think, is a little bit of public embarrassment. I don't know any other way to say it. I think the more that this gets onto the media and out, not just on local cable, on some of the local newspapers. I know the Examiner has been carrying articles about this.
The Journal has too.
The Journal News has, but the New York Times has not. For instance, so until we get some more of that kind of
higher visibility,
where it becomes even more politically untenable, not just for Con Ed, because we're not pointing our finger just at Con Ed. We're really more pointing at the PSC.
At the public service.
But have you heard this this issue and concern from other groups throughout the country? I figured.
Well, other states don't have the same guidelines. In fact, if you look at the guidelines that have been recently in the process of either approval or updating in New Jersey, they have a much more advanced, let's say, ecologically friendly set of guidelines that they're trying to implement right now.
Their right-of-way guidelines are different.
Okay. Well, we ran out of time.
Yeah.
That's it. Very quick. I'd like to thank our guests, Mark Gilliland, the Greenburgh Environmental Forum and the LORAX Working Group Chair, and Jerry Corral, who's the Political Chair for the Sierra Club Lower Hudson Group. Could we have their contact information up? Okay, it's going to be rolling with graphics. So, Jerry, you want to just give us your contact information very quickly?
Sierra Club New York .org, Lower Hudson Group.
Okay, and Mark?
Yes, it's herbtrees.blogspot.com.
Okay, I'd like to thank you both for
coming
coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.